and hardly recognized producer of the Supremes. After Diana Ross left, the Supremes had an amazing run of chart hits. And when I met Mary Wilson, who had carried on after Diana, I said, "Who produced these wonderful records?" And she just looked at me amazed, saying, "Frank Wilson." It wasn't credited on the album. And she was like amazed I didn't know that. I didn't know. I just knew they were two of my favorite hit songs are on that album. Right On is the album. And Everybody's Got the Right to Love. What a magnificent song. It stands the test of time, a wonderful piano melody. But Frank Wilson's production for the day, you could put the headphones on and Up the Ladder to the Roof, which Bette Midler covered. But the Supremes version has the sound swirling in your head. So go to YouTube, go wherever you want, put in the Supremes, Up the Ladder to the Roof, and give a listen to Frank Wilson's craftsmanship. Real craftsmanship. You'll be amazed at how this record stands up all these years later. The great harmony vocals just floating around. Beautiful song. Absolutely beautiful song. And think about it, it's like Up on the Roof, the Drifters, but Up the Ladder to the Roof. You go sit on a roof sometime, and it's a very nice place to just get away from it all. Up the ladder to the roof, where we can see heaven much better. Big Jim Sullivan sits with a sitar on Buzzy Linhart's Buzzy's Buzzy album. And Buzzy's a co-host here at Visual Radio. We lost Big Jim Sullivan yesterday. So if you go to Facebook, if you go to Buzzy Linhart's fan page, I posted the Boston Globe obit sent to me by a writer, Joe Tortelli, one of our co-hosts. Joe wrote extensively about Buzzy and Big Jim Sullivan. He alerted me today. So I've not been able to reach Buzzy yet. I left a message for him that his friend, his comrade from his first album, back in 1969, we lost Big Jim Sullivan. So tonight we're going to go over some pop stuff, pop culture. Hopefully Beatles expert Tom Thornycraft, longtime WinCam member, will be here from Stoneham. And I got the Beatles in Cleveland book, Dave Schwensen, North Shore Publishing, out of Ohio. It's the Beatles and their gig in Ohio. I went over to the Winchester Library. October 24th, I think, is the day. Rex Trailer, one of our guests, Boomtown, is at the Winchester Library. Can you dig it? Rex Trailer appeared here at WinCam. He did a station ID for The Wonderful Show. He did a interview with me for about 45 minutes, 55 minutes. And Mike Bavaro, our other guest, and Rex Trailer will be at the Winchester Public Library. So I'm going to keep announcing that. That'll be the night before the next Visual Radio. So it's 8:04 in the PM. Let me give you the schedule here. Visual Radio is going to be preempted on the 11th, a week from today, and then on the 18th because of town meetings. Maybe it's redistricting, I'm not sure. We'll be back on the 25th. Jeff Dearman will be producing and directing, and we've got a special guest from a film company. So that's happening on the 25th. I have a major film director that I will be interviewing the week before. I'm going to keep it a surprise. I've reviewed a new box set that came out from this director, but he has a brand new movie coming out. So there you go, it's a he. Major director of some of your favorite movies, including a Jodie Foster movie. So he did a big Jodie Foster movie, and she's one of our previous guests, and now I'm going to have her director on the air. This is very exciting. So I'll keep you all posted on that. Now, it's 2012, of course. It's October 4th, 2012, 42 years after Janis Joplin died. And what's coming in the mail? Vinyl records are back. Look at this. Can you see this? I got to see where I am here with the camera. Oh, it's hard for me to see because I cannot see the monitor. Here we are. There we go. All right, now I see which TV I'm on. This is the Rolling Stones, live, Some Girls, live in Texas. It's double disc. Let It Rock, All Down the Line, Honky Tonk Women, Star Star, Love in Vain, Tumbling Dice, Beast of Burden, Miss You, Imagination, Shattered, Happy, Sweet Little 16, Brown Sugar, Jumpin' Jack Flash. Now this is the Some Girls album, plus other tracks, of course, live, 2 LP and DVD set, live in Texas, 78. If memory serves, I reviewed the DVD last year, but this is Vinyl Mania. Now, the Rolling Stones and Muddy Waters, live in Chicago, 1981. This is amazing. Sweet Little Angel, Flip Flop and Fly, Country Boy, Manish Boy, Got My Mojo Working, Clouds in My Heart, Hoochie Coochie Man, Long Distance Call, Baby Please Don't Go. Lots of titles. Muddy Waters and the Rolling Stones. These are amazing, amazing discs. So, vinyl's back, and people are having fun. Hopefully, Tom Thornycraft will show up and we can talk about the Rolling Stones and the Beatles and P.F. Sloan. Remember Eve of Destruction? Still on the eve of destruction. I actually sang the song on Visual Radio one Friday night last year. So yesterday in the mail, I get P.F. Sloan, Still on the Eve of Destruction. This is a really cool record. Secret Agent Man ends it. It has 10 tracks. 10 tracks. Ends with Secret Agent Man. And it has Eve of Destruction as track 3. But it's the other tracks that are really appealing to me. Philip Flip Sloan, who, believe it or not, was a roommate of Buzzy Linhart's. All these connections. It's pretty amazing. So Phil was a roommate of Buzzy's. I met PF back in 1988, and before that, 1986, in Los Angeles. So I actually met the legendary PF Sloan, had lunch with him. I knew his girlfriend at the time, Jamie. That's how I met him, through one of my co-hosts, Lisa Kavanaugh. Jamie was her roommate and best friend, and Jamie was dating PF, and so PF came out with us, and we had dinner. And I just got this stuff in the mail. Being a P.F. Sloan fan, I mean, this is cosmic. And I got all the best records. It's got a list of the P.F. Sloan songs. You probably know Where Were You When I Needed You, The Grassroots, and the Turtles, You Baby, Nobody But You. He played guitar on California Dreamin'. That opening guitar people thought was Glenn Campbell. It might be both of them. It might be both P.F. Sloan and Glenn Campbell, but it's definitely P.F. Sloan on guitar, and few people know that. So now you viewers of Visual Radio, you have a little treat. P.F. Sloan, the writer of Secret Agent Man, is playing guitar on California Dreamin' by the Mamas and the Papas. Hold On, Per Herman's Hermits, a movie title. Hold On, P.F. Sloan wrote it. So I was over at the Winchester Library yesterday and today, and I found a Bowie book I didn't know about. There's a lot of books coming out. There's J.K. Rowling, the Harry Potter author. She has a book. Nothing to do with Harry Potter, but she has a brand new book out. And Ozzy Osbourne has 2 books out. Guy's prolific, isn't he? This is David Bowie, Starman. It's by Paul Trinka. Okay, I got it out of the Winchester Library. Very cool. Maybe we'll have Paul on the air. I love talking to authors about why they wanted to pick up on David Bowie. How big is David Bowie these days? That's the question. Because radio is so different. I don't hear a lot of David Bowie records, even on classic rock radio. Think about it. Such a huge artist. You might hear Modern Love once in a while. Hear Young Americans and WROR. But you don't hear Changes. You don't hear Space Oddity. You don't hear Suffragette City. You don't hear Ziggy Stardust. These are great, great tracks. I mean, all day long I hear Bob Seger and Leonard Skinner and Bob Seger and Leonard Skinner. Maybe a little Aerosmith. Maybe you might get a Beatles tune. I heard Aerosmith doing Come Together today. which, why can't we get classic rock radio to be lively? Lively. Anyway, more news today, and we're going to call up one of our co-hosts, because Bobby Valentine, they dropped the axe quickly.
Joe?
Hey,
How are you?
is this Bobby Valentine?
No.
I thought this was the Bobby Valentine.
Inevitable. I mean, I really expected them to nail him last night after that poor showing in New York, but they waited until today and they nabbed him. But now the question is, who are they going to bring in? They're still fixated, if I can use that word, on John Farrell. But the problem being, are the Blue Jays going to be willing to let him out of his contract, which still has 2 more years left on it? And if they aren't, what will they ask in compensation for the right to bring Farrell here? And will it start with Clay Buchholz? Because if it starts with Clay Buchholz, then you got to walk away. And the list of names that I see so far isn't anything too interesting. Basically, it's retreads. The only name that I don't see there, which would be the perfect name, would be Jim Leyland, because he would bring instant credibility to this locker room and to this team, because he knows what needs to be done.
Now, where is Jim Leyland today?
Right now, he is with the Tigers. They're going to be they're in the playoffs. They start their playoff series Sunday. Now, that would be the only drawback. Allegedly, they want to have this manager search done and complete, and a manager in place before the end of the playoffs.
But you can't even approach a manager that's in the playoffs, right?
Right. You cannot.
There's a rule.
You cannot have any coaches, managers, or anyone that's in the playoffs. You cannot have contact with them once their series begins. Right now, they could have contact with them, but once the series begins, no touch.
Oh, so they could actually talk to them before the series?
The problem being, where he's under contract, there's also a matter of tampering. Unless you can get around that tampering, the charge of tampering, which is why you don't see many managers talking to other teams many teams talking to managers that are in the playoffs. And the interesting thing is, Leyland is a free agent after this year. His contract is up, so basically the only thing that gets him back in Detroit would probably be they would have to go on and win the World Series, because I think nothing less than winning the World Series would bring him back. So Leland is going to be available. The question is, do they want Leland, or are they so fixated on Bobby Valentine? On John Farrell, that they may even think, although it sounds stupid to, they may think of handing Clay Buchholz over to bring Farrell here. And yet you hear at the same time that those guys love John Farrell, those 3 pitchers, Buchholz, Lester, and the other young kid, DeBront, and yet you'd be breaking up that team by sending Buchholz over to Toronto to bring Farrell here.
What did you think about Buchholz's terrible performance?
Well, at this point, what could you say? It was the fact that the Yankees had more to play for, and the Red Sox had nothing to play for. It was one of those things where something was going to give, and the Yankees gave it, and that was it. Now the Yankees have to worry about either Texas or Baltimore coming against them. And the interesting thing is, the way the playoffs are set up this year, the Yankees, even though they got the best record in the league, they don't get home field for the first 2 games of that series. They have to go to Baltimore. So even though they won the division, they've been penalized by these new rules with this new 1-game playoff series for this year, but then next year everything goes back to normal.
You mean there won't be a one-game playoff?
No, the one-game playoff is the 2 one-game playoffs are tomorrow.
But they won't happen next year.
Right.
Why?
I guess that was something's going to go down next year. Something different. I haven't been able to really track this down yet because I've been so involved in this Bobby Valentine thing. But from what I understand, the one game playoff will still be in play. But what's going to happen is the division winner will not be penalized like they are this year. In other words, the division winners will not have home field for the first 2 games of the divisional series. So the Yankees, the Tigers, and the Oakland Athletics are not going to get to play in front of their home crowds to start out the playoffs. They're going to have to go to the other teams to start the playoffs.
I guess my question is, if Buchholz wasn't very good the other night, do you think that Toronto's interest in him wavers?
Well, I mean, last year, mind you, now, Farrell was in the middle of a contract which was a 5-year deal. Now it's a 4-year deal, and after this season, it goes down to a 3-year deal. So there's still a lot of time left on Farrell's contract. And to give up on Farrell now and not get at least a Type A player in return in compensation for you giving up those remaining 3 years, plus he's going to one of your rivals in your division. That's the other thing. Of all things, you don't want to be giving one of your rivals an advantage, and that's a big advantage considering that Farrell has already said he wants to come here, and that makes it even tougher for Toronto because they got to get a compensation package that's worth it for them to let him out of his contract and makes it look like they got some in deference to letting him get out of his contract. And right now, a Clay Buchholz would probably be the asking price unless the Red Sox can talk him down into something else. Otherwise, I don't see John Farrell. And the interesting thing, like I say, everyone says that these pitchers love John Farrell. So basically, what you're getting is you're getting a manager. And even though we'd have to hire a pitching coach, don't be surprised if he's running the pitching staff as well as the team because he was a pitching coach to begin with before he became a manager. So he knows what these guys are capable of and how to bring it out of them. And again, in the case of Bobby Valentine, like I said before to a lot on the sports shows since this was been going down, the wrong move that was made was bringing Valentine in. He spent too much time as a commentator on the ball games on ESPN, and when you do that, and you're constantly criticizing a team that you're eventually going to go and manage, and you're criticizing certain players on that team, they're not going to get along. Look at now, Terry Francona. Sure, he's been one season out of the manager seat, and he's on ESPN. The Cleveland Indians are interested in Terry Francona now. If he signs with Cleveland, of course, he's done a couple of Cleveland Indians games on ESPN, but he hasn't been critical of the players. So naturally, it won't be as tough a fit as it was here in Boston. Plus, the ownership has a piece to blame in this because they told these players that they were not going to be bringing in a Bobby Valentine type to manage this team. And what do? Not only do they bring in a Valentine type, but they bring in Bobby Valentine. So the ownership, and then today, John Henry tweets that he's going to have a much bigger say in the managerial search now. That's sort of a problem right there because they've already told Ben Sherrington he's going to have total say in who the next manager is, but yet now instead of Larry Lucchino stepping in, because this Valentine thing was Larry Lucchino all the way.
We heard that. That's been out there.
They didn't give young Mr. Charrington the type of slack that they would have given Theo.
Now, John, you'll notice John from Medford. Were you on any radio today or yesterday?
Yeah, I was actually on the big show yesterday afternoon, and then I was on the post-game wrap-up show for the Sox game last night.
On 850?
On 850, and that's the other thing. The other big news in Boston today is that as of today, WEEI is now permanently on the FM dial.
So
only FM.
What's 850 going to be?
850 is going to now be ESPN Radio Boston.
Why?
Which means, wow, Joe, when ESPN Radio came into Boston originally, they were on radio station 860.
Right.
Which wasn't a strong signal.
Right.
They now got a strong signal, and it's going to be total ESPN coverage, which makes me happy because with the baseball playoffs starting now, I can listen to all the games on the radio as well as watch them on the TV.
So they'll have all the 850, will have all the ball games.
We'll have all ESPN programming.
Now, you don't think it'll compete with 93.7?
No, because ESPN Radio is a national outlet. The only time you hear national on 98.5 is after the DA show, and they go to Fox News, Fox Sports Radio from like midnight until 6 a.m., and then they have local programming on 98.5 until midnight the next morning. ESPN Radio is going to have total national coverage with all their morning shows that they have on their national outlet, which will be like the Mike and Mike show, Mike Golick and Mike Greenberg, First Take, Colin Cowherd and the Herd, Scott Van Pelt, and a couple of other shows, as well as when they have live sporting events like Monday Night Football, like the NBA, like the NC2A basketball and football games. Those will all now be heard on ESPN 850 Radio Boston, which is, I think I told you about this once before. When ESPN first came in, there was an ongoing thing with 1510 The Zone where they were up for sale, and I was surprised that ESPN Radio didn't jump into that and buy that station, and that way they would have been on 1510. Instead, they took 860, which was full power until 6 p.m., and then at 6 p.m.
Well, sunset.
To half power.
Until sunset.
Right.
So it's 6 p.m. in the winter, but it could be 8:40.
Oh, it was all year round.
Right. At 6 p.m.?
Yes.
No, it's usually sunset. Those are the FCC rules, John.
Right, at 6 p.m., which would be...
John, sunset could be 7 o'clock. It could be 7:30.
Well,
it fluctuates.
At 6 p.m., I remember because I would tune into ESPN Radio.
Okay.
Catch the ball games, and the station would be on half power, so you couldn't get it. You would literally...
Well, that's ridiculous, because the FCC rules, as I know them, are sunset. So why would you cheat your audience out of full power at 6 o'clock when you can go till 8 o'clock?
Well, I don't know.
Okay, so maybe you were listening during the winter. But 1510 you brought up. Now, 1510 should have progressive radio. I don't know why Yahoo Sports is on it.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, Jeff, what's his name there?
Passon.
No, Jeff Santos came to the Medford Public Library to talk about progressive talk radio. I wrote it up in the Medford Transcript. The Arlington Advocate picked up my story, and he was at the Medford Library. We're all part of this email group on Yahoo, and Jeff and his girlfriend and another friend of mine helped to launch 1510.
Right.
Now, I tune in, and we got a presidential campaign, and it's Yahoo Sports. So I don't know what's going on with the progressive talk. Some days you hear it, some days it's Yahoo Sports.
And also you got to remember, also during the baseball season, the Red Sox Spanish broadcast of the game is also on 1510.
Yeah, 104.9 carries the Red Sox as well. So, anyways, John, are you crazy, or am I crazy, or are we both crazy?
Why?
I'm reading a book here called The Underground Church. And Mark 3:21 in the Bible says, when his family heard it, they went out to restrain him, for people were saying he has gone out of his mind. They're talking about Jesus.
Yeah, I don't know.
I didn't know that was in the Bible. He has gone out of his mind.
No, like I said to you the other night, I think, at least in Medford, Elizabeth Warren, and this is just joking, has lost her chance to get elected out.
Because she was hanging out with Mayor McGlynn yesterday.
Yes.
And I guess the Dalai Lama was here yesterday, too. The Dalai Lama and Elizabeth Warren invade Medford. It's a very touchy subject, but I was up at the council, as you know, on Tuesday night.
I'm watching you right now, as a matter of fact.
Is it this Tuesday or?
This Tuesday, yeah.
Oh, I'm on right now, huh?
Yeah.
So if you tune into Channel 22 in Medford, people, you'll see me talking to Councilor Bob Penter and the council about the Medford transcript.
Oh, the transcript, yeah.
Well, you know, I did a long essay today, and, you know, my blog has gone through the roof with hits. So I want to know who's, like, reading this. I think it might be maybe the whole staff of the transcript is freaking out because I have some information that other people don't have, and I put it out on the blog today.
Yeah.
From 9 years ago when they were putting false headlines in the paper in Medford. It was a false headline. So I told you, John, I wrote to the editor, and they refused to put a rebuttal. And then I went over her head. They refused, and I went back over her head, and they finally printed my letter, which told the truth.
Right.
But false headlines. So why did I bring this up 9 years later? Or what is it, 2003? Yeah, it's 9 years, right?
About, yeah.
8 or 9 years, 2003, 4, I forget. The reason I'm bringing it up, people, is because the city solicitor of Medford had to go up and correct.
It's about 10 years.
They had to go up and correct the transcript article from last week where they were implying city councilors were engaged in conflict of interest. So one councilor went through the roof.
In conflict of interest, it's been Nell Escobar Coakley.
Well, you said it, I didn't. But, you know, I didn't. No, actually, on my blog, I said Nell would have issue with Allison Goldsberry at Inside Medford. And Nell would say to me, how can she write about the TV station when she was on the board of directors? And I said, well, Nell, she does admit it. She puts under the article, full disclosure, I was on the board of directors for 2 months.
Right.
She wasn't even on for a year. She quit because of me. She did me a favor. She shook my hand at City Hall, and the board of directors yelled and screamed at her, so she quit.
Right.
She said that their board meetings were consumed with talking about me.
Of course.
Well, I mean, you know, that's silly. You know.
It's because you were the pinata for them. But
Oh, I was no pinata, my friend. I was the brick. No, John. I was the brick wall. John.
What?
You're not on sports radio. This is visual radio.
Okay.
Don't talk over me, because I'll hang up on you like you know who.
Oh, yeah. The flaming...
John, please. They ran into a brick wall.
Right.
See, when you say things like that, I have to edit it out tomorrow. That's not fair to me, John.
Okay.
You're not on sports radio. I don't want to, you know, but they ran into a brick wall with me. And the bottom line is this. A member of the board of directors quit because we were out there saying, hey, Malden issues a hard copy of the transactions of all the books. Issue a hard copy of the books. Now, that's not hard to do. But I put a public records request in, John, to the city solicitor. And you know what he writes? We do not have those records. I mean, what kind of city hall are you to not have the records you're supposed to have? Now, one of two things, John. They either didn't deliver these minutes to the meetings to the city hall as they're required to do, or the mayor threw them out. What do you think it is?
Oh, what about option 3? TV3 threw them out.
Well, no, that was option 1. They didn't deliver them to City Hall.
Oh, okay.
They can throw them out all they want. They are required by the agreement to hand over the...
number 2. One from column A, one from column B.
I think so, too. Now, the other thing they're supposed to hand over is the purchase of all equipment, which, of course, you and I and the rest of the community co-own with them.
Right.
We co-own the equipment. Well, the city solicitor, Mark Rumley, writes me and says, we do not have those records in the solicitor's office. So I wrote back and said, if they're not in the solicitor's office, are they anywhere at City Hall? No response, John.
Of course.
Maybe they're in Linda Coletti's desk. Maybe they're in Ben Averbrook's office.
You never know.
Maybe they're with Donna Beston.
Or maybe they're with the mayor.
Or Lauren DiLorenzo, or Adeline, or Stephanie. I mean, but that's the great thing about WinCam, Winchester, so be proud. WinCam will let you sit in on our board meeting. WinCam allows for transparency. So God bless WinCam, because that's a plus. I just thought I'd alert you to that, Johnny. So, when the transcript writes a headline like that, and then this whole thing with, my opinion, these city councilors were distractions away from McGlynn being in the previous week. See, I think the editor wanted to put McGlynn out there as a little inoculation. Do you know what an inoculation is in newspaper terms?
No.
Okay, it's like Mitt Romney should have given all his taxes. He should have given all his taxes. It would have inoculated him a year ago, 2 years ago. If he just did it, it would have been done and everyone would have forgotten it. Okay?
Yeah.
So, last night's debate, Obama was letting him rant and rant and rant, because Obama's like George Foreman. Let him get it all out in the first one. Better look out for the left hook in the second one. He's letting him get all the ranting out. Now they're dissecting all the lies in the media. So all this stuff about who won the debate, who cares? It's not going to move the needle.
Oh, we'll see. We'll see come in November, next month.
Yep.
November 6th.
We'll see in November.
Yep.
But Bobby Valentine's gone. I wanted you to address the situation.
Yeah.
And onward, Christian soldiers. I'm going to talk about movies.
And I'll talk to you next week or after.
No, we're off for 2 weeks. We're going to play reruns.
Okay.
And then on the 25th, I have an in-studio guest people, a film producer. It was set up by Jeff Dearman. Jeff will be here directing. So we'll be in touch.
And you were mentioning movies. You know what today is?
Alfred Hitchcock Day?
No, 30 years ago today, the movie E.T. premiered.
Oh. E.T.
The E.T. the Extraterrestrial with Drew Barrymore and Henry Thomas.
Well, thank you for that. And the views and opinions on visual radios are those of John Byers, and not necessarily those of the host, the TV station, the board of directors, or the members of WinCam. I want that out there. The views and opinions of John Byers are John Byers' views and opinions. Got it?
Yeah, I'll talk to you, Joe.
Thanks, Johnny. Bye. The views and opinions on visual radio are all mine, except for whatever John Byers says. And the views and opinions on visual radio, those are the host and his guests, except for John Byers. His views and opinions are all his own. Don't let Bobby Valentin get mad at us for that. And if you got a problem, talk to Johnny. All right, now, we do have 3 films to discuss tonight. 3 films. This is exciting.
Stritto, talking about movies.
Hey, Frank, how are you?
I'm all right. How are you?
Good. Do you have the list of films?
I do.
Good, because I do not.
Okay, but before we get into that, what the world wants to know, maybe you've told them before I got on air, is what do you think of Looper? Have you seen it?
I wanted to go last Saturday night, and I was exhausted. My roommate said, do not go.
Okay.
So I had to obey because, I was really exhausted. I would have been pushing myself.
All right.
So I didn't go.
Okay, well, maybe we'll discuss it next time.
Have you seen it?
I did see it.
All right, so we'll discuss it next time, which will be in 3 weeks.
Okay.
But I will say this about Looper. Joseph Gordon-Levitt is in a lot of movies currently.
Yes. So what do you read into that?
I'm impressed. I'm impressed because a lot of child stars don't get out of the child star mold.
Yeah.
Danny Bonaducci's biggest claim to fame right now is he got bit by someone this week.
Oh, okay. Well, anything, no such thing as bad publicity.
They thought they must have thought he was a partridge in
Okay.
a pear tree, but it was Danny Bonaducci. I don't know.
Okay.
E.T. was made today? It was released today, years ago?
Oh yeah, there's a 30th anniversary coming out, or
That's what my sports guy said, John Byers, just before we called you.
yeah, and is it on coming out in the theaters as a review? I mean, as a revival, or is it coming out on Blu-ray? I can't. The publicity is almost the same for these movies, so I can never tell which is which until I pay attention.
Well, there's just a plethora of media stuff coming out right now. There's a Kenny Rogers book, there's books, there's movies, there's DVDs. It's really mind-boggling. I'm holding up vinyl records. They're sending me vinyl records, Frank.
Okay, well.
Muddy Waters and the Rolling Stones. I mean, these are amazing packages. But people want vinyl again.
Okay.
I
only get a package when you send me something.
Huh?
Oh. I only get a package when you send me.
I'll have to send you a new package. I sent you some movie posters.
Yeah, you did, and they were quite popular. I kept some. I gave some away. So yeah, no, they were much appreciated.
Oh, I got more in storage. I'll try to get them down to you.
Okay, very good.
All right.
Okay, the three movies.
Tomorrow night.
Tomorrow night is Roger Corman's 1960 film Last Woman on Earth. A week from tomorrow night is the 1963 John Wayne movie McClintock, and for the life of me, I don't know how it got into the public domain. And on 2 weeks from tomorrow night, on October 19th, is Royal Wedding 1951, and that is an MGM musical, and you would be surprised to see it in the public domain, but apparently there was a slip-up, and a handful of MGM movies from 1951 never got renewed.
Now, what was amazing was you could see the whole thing on YouTube if you want.
Yeah, well, I mean, once it's in public domain, if you can get a print, you can do whatever you want with it. So it is amazing. I mean, well, we'll talk about that one. We'll talk about them in order first. Last Woman on Earth, 1960. This is Roger Corman. Roger Corman is about to go into the 60s when he gets bigger budgets and some name actors, and starts building a kind of a higher class company than he went through the 50s with. But I find Corman most interesting when he has no budget and he has to come up with ideas. And some of his really low budget films I think date better than his bigger budget films, because I think that's where his artistic genius lie, and is getting something out of nothing. And Last Woman on Earth is a low-budget movie, and he went to Puerto Rico with a few actors and a small team to make Beast from the Haunted Cave, and he never wasted a location, so he often made two movies, even though he was only scheduled to make one. And the second movie he made while there is Last Woman on Earth.
Which probably did it come after The Last Man on Earth?
No, it's actually, I was sure it had, but it actually came 4 years before it. The Vincent Price Last Man on Earth movie came out in 1964. So he's got some precedent there. And it's got kind of a Twilight Zone-esque premise. You know, three people in Puerto Rico go diving, and when they come up, there's nobody there. They're all dead. And apparently oxygen somehow left the system for a while. Everybody who wasn't breathing out of an oxygen tank is dead. So this helps Corman get down to the basics and save his budget, because after they dive, there's only three people left in the movie for the rest of the movie. You never see anybody else, and for all we know, they're the last people on Earth. And I'm not giving away any plot there, because that all happens in the first few minutes. But I would say that the thing I like best about this movie is the first few minutes, because Corman makes, you know, he had no budget, but he had a real talent for getting in the places where cameras don't get, and he is at a Puerto Rican cockfight early in the film.
Ooh.
And this has an air of authenticity about it. Now, watching cockfighting is not for everybody. I was watching this film with my wife yesterday, and she turned away. So I let your viewers be warned. There's a real cockfight in the beginning. But as you're watching it, you know this is the real thing. He didn't stage this. He didn't have the budget for it. He slipped somebody a couple of bucks to let him go in and film it. And so there's a scene in the cockfight, and the action in the scene is worked into the plot of the movie. But it's really something to see. And then when things get a lot quieter once everyone's gone except the three principals.
Let me ask this though: was cockfighting illegal back in 1960?
Apparently not in Puerto Rico. I don't know. So it's not a federal law as far as I know. So
right now it would be total cruelty to animals.
I'm sure. Is it legal in Puerto Rico? I have no idea. So you got to get a lawyer on to ask him that.
Amazing. So he's got this grisly opening.
Yeah, and it's Grizzly might be too strong a word, but this is, you go, wow, you know, and you know, and in that sense, it's a piece of anthropological history. Anyway, the plot unfolds. There's only 3 of them left, and one of them is a woman. She's the last woman on Earth, but there's 2 guys, so there's a bit of a triangle forms, but I don't need to say any more because I'll give away the plot.
Well, let me ask this. Do you think people who saw the Vincent Price movie thought it might have been a sequel?
I doubt it, because I think this Corman movies came and went.
Okay.
And, you know, was anybody going to remember it 4 years later? Probably not. This is the kind of movie that would play second feature at a drive-in.
Right.
It was not a splash, you know, it didn't make a splash. But by the way, it's the title is Last Woman on Earth. The Last Woman on Earth is a 1990s movie of a different title, so for a while there I was wondering which one we were looking at. So, but that's definitely this one. And the interesting person to watch in this is Robert Towne, who is the screenwriter. But again, Corman never had a budget, so when he needed an actor, he took the guy that wrote the script and said, "You play this part." And you know, it's clear he's not a professional actor. There's some awkwardness there, but he has to carry a lot of the movie. And Robert Towne won an Oscar for Chinatown. He was one of the top screenwriters through the 1980s, 90s, and I guess he's retired now, but certainly through the 1980s.
He didn't win an Oscar for the acting in Chinatown. He won it for the screenplay.
No, he wasn't in. No, I think he actually has a scene in Chinatown. I'm not sure of that. He often has scenes in his movies, a la Hitchcock. But he has a big part in this. And I mean, when there's only 3 people left on Earth, it's hard to get a small part. But the guy to watch in the first scenes, and the guy to watch, I think, is Anthony Carbone, who was one of, you know, who the hell is Anthony Carbone? He was one of the Corman company. So he pops up in his movies a lot, and but he's really quite good as the kind of a gangster, shifty businessman type. Who, you know, when everyone dies, he's got his millions are gone, his life is gone, but he does quite a good job in that. It was really a first-rate performance in a movie that is obviously low budget, quickly made, and you know, with at least one actor who's not a professional. The Last Woman on Earth is played by Betsy Jones. She did a lot of TV. I had never heard of her, but when you see her, she kind of looks familiar, and you look up, and it was probably not a major TV series through the 60s and 70s that she didn't appear in at one time, not always in a big role, but she has credits in all those.
We've got about 12 minutes left. Should we wrap up this film?
We're wrapping up this film and moving on to McClintock.
McClintock will be airing on the 12th, people, in Winchester, on the 12th at 9 p.m., Friday night the 12th. And McClintock with John Wayne.
John Wayne. And I was talking about the Corman Company, and there's kind of a John Wayne company. You know, he's 1963. He's making movies that I guess some people would have thought had gone out of style 10 years before, but he is still making them. They're still making money, and he'll make them through the 60s. And so in this are a lot of people you'll see, familiar faces from John Wayne movies. It's directed by Andrew McLaughlin, who directed a lot of Wayne's latter movies. McLaughlin did a lot of westerns, a lot of television westerns, a lot of Gunsmoke, a lot of How the Gun Will Travel. His leading lady is Maureen O'Hara, who he'll make 4 other movies with. Bruce Cabot, Chill Wills are kind of standbys in all his westerns. They tend to have small roles, sometimes bigger roles, but they pop up.
Bruce Cabot from one of our monster movies, right?
Yes, Bruce Cabot, who played Jack Driscoll in King Kong.
So it would be 41, 51. It's like 30 years later.
30 years later, he's playing supporting roles in John Wayne westerns. And believe it or not, I didn't know this until I started reading about this movie, but I guess it's pretty apparent on screen. This is a Western adaptation of Taming of the Shrew.
Oh.
So you know, you're giving your audience some class a week from tomorrow when they see a little Shakespeare adaptation.
Taming of the True Grit. Where is this in time compared to True Grit with John Wayne?
True Grit is one of his latter ones. So, you know, Wayne's movie persona lasted through the 60s, but then it kind of worn thin. But then he came back kind of playing the same kind of role, but with more depth in True Grit. And my personal favorite, The Shootist, came in the early 70s. I guess The Shootist was 1976. I think it was his last movie before he died. Excellent film. True Grit is right up there with it. And so, I mean, it's before that. This is classic Wayne. And then he comes back in the 70s with kind of, I would still say classic Wayne, but the character with more depth, a character who is something more behind him than the hard glare and ready smile of the true American hero. It's a dark, I won't say a dark side, but there's a thoughtful, introspective side of the men that have been killed and things like that, and you can see that more in his eyes. And it's really an amazing achievement by Wayne to take his character basically and not change it, but just add extra layers to it so late in his career. And was he a great actor? I'll let other people say that, but he created a great character, and that character appeared in probably dozens of movies, but he always gave it everything he had, and he really should get credit for what he did very late in his career.
I agree with you.
By the way, this movie is famous for its finale mudslide scenes. There's a big fight in a mud pit, and one character after another slides down into it, and they're beating up each other. And it's probably one of the messiest scenes in the history of the cinema.
Not Joan Collins and Linda Evans.
No, not exactly that.
Okay.
But I mean, Maureen O'Hara had a lot of Irish spunk in her, so she's as fiery as can be in this.
Is she wearing a dress in the mudslide, or?
I believe, yes, she is. Well, wait a minute.
Of course.
I forget the dress came off and they had those pantaloon type things on. So you already hold that in suspense for your audience.
Okay.
And this is Yvonne De Carlo's last movie before Lily Munster.
Really?
Yes, Lily Munster was born in 1964, and this movie was made in 1963. And
so Yvonne De Carlo went from country to monster movies.
Yes.
She should have taken Bruce Cabot with her.
Yeah, they could have used her for Kong. I guess they had that monster that lived in the basement and that roared sometimes. Or was that the Addams Family?
I get them all confused too because I was so young.
Yeah, but I watched them all, and so they're all kind of melded in my mind.
They were unique.
Yeah. Yvonne De Carlo has just passed 40 when she makes this movie, and she was born a bit too late. They tried to make her into the glamour star, but in the post-war era, the studios didn't have the control and all that, so she never really career never really got off the ground. She starred in a few movies, but never really went anywhere, and she was kind of reduced to this is a supporting role in this movie. It's not a major movie, not a major role. And all of a sudden, her immortality comes a year later as Lily Munster. So,
well, I'm going to say this about the Munsters and the Addams Family. At that point in time, the horror films had become nice fare for early evenings, at least in Boston, where like at 7 o'clock at night they would have a horror movie.
Yeah.
And they would have characters. We had Feep up here, which was a guy with a round head, and it's probably Frank Avarucci who played Bozo. He probably played Feep as well. And Feep would introduce the movies.
Yeah.
And so with those movies being so popular with the kids, I was one of the kids. I think it was just brilliant of Hollywood to do these Addams Family Munster things.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about the time migration. When the Universal Monster movies came on, television premieres, had their television premieres in 1957, 58, they were coming on like at midnight. And kids like me would hear about them, but there was no way my parents were letting me sit up. Then every year they migrated earlier, and then they were on 10 o'clock, and then
right.
they were on 9 o'clock. Pretty soon they were on Saturday afternoons, we would watch them. And so, yeah, I mean, about this time, 9 o'clock at night, 7 o'clock at night, they could pop up any time. And so I guess our horror host of note was Zachary, and so yours was a guy named Phoebe?
Feep, F-E-E-P, an outer space little Martian alien. And there was Vampira, right, doing all this stuff?
Vampira, well, she was out on the West Coast, and she was long before this. She was when you read about her career, it was amazingly short. It was in the early 50s, so I don't know if she had her own horror show later on or not. I think not. The horror hosts that came in around in the late 50s, 60s to introduce the Universal ones, I think we're a different breed. Anyway, I guess we better move on to the...
We have exactly 5 minutes.
Okay. So that's 2 weeks from tonight. That's October 19th. You'll be showing Royal Wedding, a musical with Fred Astaire.
Yeah, 2 weeks from tomorrow night, 9 o'clock on Friday the 19th.
That's right. And
Fred Astaire.
November 20th, 1947. Remember that date. That's the date that Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip got married.
Oh.
And that is what they're talking about in Royal Wedding. It is Fred Astaire and Jane Powell, who plays his sister in the movie, get a gig in London, and it's overlapping with the royal wedding, and so they kind of weave. That's not a part of the plot, but that's always in the background. And in one of the scenes, the young married couple goes by in the royal carriage, and they're waving at him and all that. So it's not really about the royal wedding. It's about a couple of American entertainers who are in London during the royal wedding, which was a big deal. I mean, the war was over. England was getting out of a pretty rough time, and one of the highlights of the post-war years was the new generation of royals coming in. Elizabeth, turned out to make a perfect queen, and her marriage was a big deal and a big boost for morale. The most famous...
But her grandchildren are such a disappointment.
Well, I won't get into that. What is the role of royalty in the 21st century? The answer may be, what is the role? I don't know.
The paparazzi feed on them.
Yeah, so I don't bug them. Anyway.
Oh, well, I have a question, too. Do you think that maybe after the war, England sped up their marriage so they'd have something to hold on to?
You think after the war, England split up their marriage?
No, sped up. Said, okay, you're a nice couple. We need this wedding now.
No, I don't think it was sped up. From what I've read about it, and you have to get another guest on to talk about the royals, because that's not my expertise.
Okay.
What I've read about it, these royal weddings, they were much more planned than they are now. So there was a lot of, and they knew Elizabeth was hitting marriage age. I guess she was 23 when she got married, and they had from day one they had a list of suitable husbands for her, or suitable candidates for her husband. And so no, did they speed it up? I doubt it. I mean, I think it was fortuitous. She was just becoming in the marriage age as the war ended. It wouldn't have been.
Here are your candidates. Pick a husband, any husband.
Yeah, well, I understand Prince Philip wasn't on the top of the king's list. He wasn't that crazy about him, but she loved him, so she prevailed in that.
Good for her.
They're still married. What is it? 64 years later.
Good for her.
It's 65 years later. They're still married. So their next anniversary will be the 65th anyway. Anyway, so. There's the thing that you'll probably everybody who watches any documentaries or sees anything about musicals has seen the most famous routine in this movie, and that is the scene where Fred Astaire is so much in love that he starts dancing on the floor, and then all of a sudden he's dancing on the wall, and then he's dancing upside down on the ceiling.
So that's where Tom Cruise got it from.
Yeah, that's it. And that was done with when you watch that, you say, how the hell did they do that? And actually, they had the room and the camera all mounted inside a revolving drum that they could turn.
Ah.
So Fred Astaire just had to follow the gravity. But it's quite a stunning thing to see. There's an autobiographical tone to this movie. Fred Astaire's original dance partner was his sister Adele. And in this movie, he and Jane Powell plays his sister, and they're going to England, and his sister in real life and his sister in the movie both wound up marrying British lords. I guess Jane Powell got the better deal because she marries Peter Lawford in the movie, and Fred Astaire too. They broke up because they married separate people, and Fred Astaire's girlfriend, who becomes his bride in this movie, is played by an actress named Sarah Churchill, who is the second daughter of Winston Churchill.
And on that note, the author of Vampire of London, Frank Dello Stritto. What's your website, Frank?
God, I don't know.
Google Frank Dello Stritto, Vampire of London. Thanks, man. Thanks for being on Visual Radio tonight.
Anytime, Joe.
See you in 3 weeks. Bye.
Bye.
And that's our show for tonight. Thank you, Judy. Thank you, Anthony Gameri, for picking these great movies. Visual Radio, October 4th, 2012. Thank you.